After being forced into a blind date, I married the CEO. My mom had barely been gone 6 months when Dad remarried and shipped me off to live with my aunt in the countryside. Now, 5 years later, he's dragging me back to the city for one reason: to marry me off to some disabled old man in place of my stepsister. To escape this nightmare, I planned to quickly marry my boyfriend of 5 years, Ryan Mitchell. If I lost my value as a marriage pawn, maybe the threats would disappear. But when I arrived at Ryan's apartment, I found another woman in his bed. And that woman was my stepsister, Emma. They were tangled together, completely unaware I was watching from the doorway. Dad's making that country bumpkin, Sophia, take my place and marry that paralyzed old man. Emma purred, running her fingers down Ryan's chest. She'll probably come begging you to marry her. Don't you dare say yes. Ryan laughed cruelly. I only dated her to get close to you. Why would I ever marry a nobody like her? Their laughter felt like needles piercing my heart. I'd thought Ryan was my salvation, but he was just another hell. At least I hadn't fallen completely into their trap. To avoid letting this mother-daughter duo take their anger out on Mom's belongings, I slipped away quietly without confronting the cheating pair. With Ryan out of the picture, I accepted an invitation from an elderly woman I'd met while working part-time at the hospital. Her grandson Alex needed a marriage of convenience to stop his family from setting him up with random women. We reached an agreement and quickly got our marriage license. Before we parted ways, he handed me a bank card. There's only $520 on it, he said. Consider it a symbolic dowry to appease my grandmother. I took the card and immediately transferred him $524.5 via Venmo, including his half of the marriage license fee. Since this is a business arrangement, we should keep things clear, I said as I got into my taxi. $500 isn't much, but you shouldn't have to pay for the license alone. Something in my words seemed to strike him wrong. He stood frozen, staring at me with those dark eyes as I drove away. I clutched the marriage certificate and took a deep breath before opening the door to the Hamilton family mansion. Dad and my stepmother were waiting in the living room, their smiles immediately turning to frowns when they saw me. I should have just gotten a dog instead, Dad sneered. At least a dog would wag its tail and come when called. Before I could respond, Emma came down the stairs, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Sophia, don't think I don't know where you've been hiding. You're trying to find someone to marry so you can avoid Dad's plan, aren't you? You should be grateful for this arrangement, she continued, pointing at me accusingly. This is the best you'll ever do. Stop being so ungrateful. Sorry to disappoint you, but someone actually was willing to marry me. I pulled out the marriage certificate with a cold smile. Since you think your fiancé is so wonderful, why don't you marry him yourself? It's more dignified than being someone's mistress. Emma's face turned red with rage. What do you know? She lunged for my marriage certificate. But since she was shorter than me, I simply held it up high while she jumped around frantically. Don't be ridiculous, she shrieked. You probably grabbed some homeless guy off the street. How pathetic. Sophia, my stepmother chimed in with fake concern. If you didn't want this arrangement, you should have discussed it with your father instead of making decisions behind his back. Without my permission, what right did you have to marry someone else? Dad moved closer, his eyes full of menace. You're going to cancel this fake certificate right now and marry into the Anderson family, or you'll pay back every penny I spent raising you. He raised his hand to slap me, cursing under his breath. I dodged and struck him across the face with the marriage certificate, making him cry out in pain. Here's my debit card, I said, throwing it at him. Use everything in there to settle my debt. He grabbed the card eagerly and ran it through the card reader on the table, ready to mock me. You're still an intern. How much money could you possibly have? His voice trailed off as he stared at the screen in shock. $100,000? Where? Where did you get this money? I was just as surprised. I'd meant to give him my card, but I'd accidentally handed him the one Alex had given me. Before I could explain, my stepmother spoke up quietly. Sophia's only been working for a few months. Where would she get this much money? I think I lost a pair of diamond bracelets recently, worth exactly 100,000. So I didn't raise an ungrateful daughter, I raised a thief, Dad roared. Emma grabbed her phone and called the police. There's been a robbery at my house. Please come investigate immediately. She hung up and waved Alex's card in front of me. Before the police get here, you'd better decide. Marry into the Anderson family in my place, or go to prison and ruin your entire life. I stared at these two ridiculous women. Did they really think they were the only people in the world who could have 100, 0? Before the police arrived, I didn't say a word in my defense. I just texted Alex. Soon enough, 2 officers showed up at the door. Are you Sophia Hamilton? One of them asked politely. Emma smirked, clearly expecting me to be arrested. Your husband already called to verify that the money was his transfer to you, the officer continued. We've checked the source is legitimate. No crime has been committed. He turned to Emma. However, filing false police reports and disrupting public order can result in up to 5 days detention. Emma stumbled backward in disbelief. That's impossible. How could she find such a rich husband? Dad and my stepmother immediately started begging. Please, we'll pay whatever fine. We only follow the law, the officers replied, handcuffing Emma. We don't accept bribes. After Emma was taken away, my stepmother looked at me with tears in her eyes. Sophia, I've told you many times we could discuss this. Why did you have to hurt your sister like this? You've turned our happy family upside down. Are we your enemies? I almost laughed at her performance. Threatening me with Mom's belongings was her idea of discussion. Dad hugged his sobbing wife and glared at me. Who is this husband of yours? I'll go talk to him personally. If he doesn't divorce you, I'll make sure he can't even keep that 100,000. You have no vision, he continued. 100,000 is nothing to the Anderson family, just pocket change they throw around as tips. Marry into that family and you'll have countless hundreds of thousands. My business would benefit too. Everyone wins. I snorted. Didn't you always tell me to let Emma have everything? Now I'm letting her have this wonderful opportunity. I'm not worthy of such blessings. Dad's face turned red as he realized how hypocritical he sounded. Suddenly, my stepmother's expression changed. She looked at Dad reproachfully. Don't be so hard on her. She's young and doesn't understand. Sophia, she said, her voice sickeningly sweet. I was only trying to find you security in the city because I felt sorry for you living in the countryside. If you don't appreciate it, fine. We won't force you to divorce anymore. Just bring your husband home for dinner. I didn't trust her for a second and started to leave without responding. If you don't listen to your mother, I'll throw away all of your real mother's belongings, Dad shouted behind me. That stopped me cold. I turned around with a bitter smile. I'll bring him to meet you. Set a date. And she's not my mother is dead. If you want me to call someone Mom, kill someone first and see how it feels. The couple was furious, but I walked away without looking back. They scheduled the dinner for the day. Emma got out of jail. I contacted Alex with my request, and he simply replied, okay. When Alex arrived at the appointed address, he paused at the door with a strange smile. What a coincidence! Before I could ask what he meant, the mansion door opened to reveal Emma in a stunning strapless gown with a high slit showing off her legs. You must be Sophia's husband, she purred, extending her red manicured hand toward Alex. I'm her sister, Emma. Pleasure to meet you. Hello, Alex replied, glancing at me before his gaze lingered on her for a moment. He didn't shake her hand, but his attention was clearly caught. Following behind them, I watched Emma's swaying hips and remembered her scene with Ryan. Was she seriously trying to steal another one of my men? She'd already succeeded in seducing my boyfriend away from me. I had no confidence that Alex, who was only my husband on paper, wouldn't change his mind too. While Dad was still out and Alex stepped away to take a call, I wandered around the mansion hoping to find Mom's belongings. Maybe then I wouldn't have to endure their threats anymore. As I approached the attic storage room, I heard two women whispering secretively. "Even if Dad can't convince that man, I'm still here," Emma was saying. "I stole her boyfriend. I can steal her husband too. Besides, this Alex is much better looking than Ryan." That country girl's taste in men might be her only redeeming quality, but compared to your father, he's probably just a poor boy, my stepmother replied. "Have your fun, but don't get serious." I watched them walk away and snorted quietly. This mother-daughter duo really were cut from the same cloth. They loved stealing other people's things. At dinner, the women's little scheme began in earnest. They kept exchanging meaningful glances and focusing all their attention on Alex. I watched Alex eat calmly, his expression unreadable. Under the table, Emma had been rubbing her leg against his for 10 minutes, and he wasn't stopping her. I poured myself a drink, feeling oddly hollow inside. Since Mom died, everything that should have been mine had gone to Emma instead. Now even my contract husband, maybe only that paralyzed old man would be safe from her clutches. "Emma, you've been rubbing your leg against me for 10 minutes, Alex suddenly said, setting down his chopsticks and looking at her seriously. "I can rule out accidental contact. I suspect you have severe ADHD. This type of behavior might be related to psychological disorders. I know a psychology expert I could recommend. If it's more serious, it could be a psychiatric issue. I know people in that field too." I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud as I watched Alex's completely serious expression and Emma's mortified face as she yanked her leg back. I couldn't decide whether to admire him as a master at detecting gold diggers or as a model husband. "I don't need any of that," Emma snapped through gritted teeth. Dad coughed awkwardly, trying to change the subject. "My daughter has no experience with the world. A mere 100,000 was enough to make her sell herself, but I'm not so easily fooled. I've already found her a match with a family equal to ours. How much money will it take for you to leave my daughter?" "Sir, while I don't approve of objectifying Sophia, I can see that you don't value this daughter very much," Alex said, pulling out his checkbook with steady eyes. "So tell me, how much money would it take for you to leave Sophia alone?" Dad looked at the check and laughed coldly. "You think a blank check will intimidate me? The family I found for my daughter is Anderson Industries. Weigh yourself against that and see if you measure up." Alex was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "Anderson Industries, the nation's wealthiest company. That's quite impressive. But you can't claim to split the market equally with Anderson just because Hamilton Corp has 10% market share while Anderson has 90%. Dad's face turned purple with rage. "That's still better than some poor nobody who can only offer my daughter 100,000. "I forgot to mention," Alex said, still smiling gently as he pulled out a business card. "Anderson Industries is my family's company. I'm currently managing it. Allow me to properly introduce myself. I'm Alex Anderson." I stared at him in shock. I knew he wasn't the type to lie or show off. Suddenly, I thought about the rumors of the disabled old man Emma was supposed to marry. Where was he old? Where was he ugly? However, no one except me believed his words. After about a minute of silence, everyone except Alex and me burst into laughter. Ding! The doorbell suddenly rang. The housekeeper brought in an elegant elderly woman, the same Mrs. Anderson who had arranged my blind date with Alex. Her arrival made everyone jump to their feet excitedly. Mrs. Anderson, what brings you here? Please, have a seat, Dad said, bowing and offering his chair. He pointed at Alex. You've arrived at the perfect time. This person is impersonating your grandson. How should we handle this? I have no such grandson, Mrs. Anderson said sternly, looking annoyed. I stared at her in confusion. Why was Alex's grandmother undermining her own grandson? Emma, still smarting from earlier humiliation, saw her chance for revenge. He's such a fraud. You two need to get out before you embarrass yourselves further in front of Mrs. Anderson, she said, crossing her arms and glaring at Alex and me with disgust. Suddenly, Mrs. Anderson pulled me over, excited. This is my granddaughter-in-law. She can't leave. Dad relaxed, thinking it would be easy to convince Mrs. Anderson to switch me for Emma. He cleared his throat and gestured for my stepmother to keep Emma quiet, then walked over to Alex. Young man, I gave you a chance earlier and you didn't take it. Now, it won't be so easy to walk away unscathed. Oh? What else do you want me to do? Alex raised an eyebrow, looking at him with disdain. Dad's anger flared at Alex's fearless attitude. Besides, what I mentioned before, you need to kowtow 3 times to me, or I'll call the police and have you charged. Emma whispered mockingly in my ear. No wonder you'd find someone with such a criminal background to embarrass yourself with. I glanced at her but didn't respond. She'd have plenty to cry about soon enough. What? You want my grandson to kowtow and go to prison? Mrs. Anderson looked at Dad in shock. Dad's arrogance immediately deflated. He stammered nervously. You just said he wasn't your grandson. He only gave Sophia 100,000 as a dowry when they got married. That's not how my grandson should behave, Mrs. Anderson said, shaking her head at Alex. But this boy has taken over my company now, so I can't deny him even if I wanted to. Alex looked aggrieved. Grandma, you misunderstood. Sophia insisted on splitting the marriage license fee with me. I was afraid she wouldn't accept more money. You silly girl. Mrs. Anderson squeezed my hand affectionately. That money belonged to you anyway. Not taking it just benefits this boy. I was stunned. Who could have imagined that working part-time at a care facility would lead me to meet the former head of Anderson Industries and end up with a CEO husband? I heard the sound of chattering teeth and looked over to see Dad, his face red as if he might cry from regret. His company had been facing a crisis lately, which was why he'd been so desperate to marry me into the Anderson family. Now he'd offended the head of Anderson Industries through his own blindness. The mother-daughter duo beside him looked even worse, staring at Alex like wolves eyeing prey. I came here to formally discuss my grandson and Sophia's wedding with the in-laws, Mrs. Anderson said politely to Dad. We need to settle the dowry and other arrangements. Dad was too nervous to speak coherently. My stepmother, quicker on the uptake, jumped in. Mrs. Anderson, surely you remember the engagement made with the Hamilton family 10 years ago? It was for my daughter Emma, not Sophia. Mrs. Anderson? Emma said, grabbing the elderly woman's hand with tears in her voice. My sister knew about my engagement to Alex, but she used some underhanded method to trick him into marrying her instead. I'm sure someone as righteous as you wouldn't approve of such scheming tactics. I almost laughed out loud. I'd seen people court death before, but never someone so eager to walk into their own grave. Mrs. Anderson, who had been polite to everyone, was clearly offended. She pulled her hand away sharply. I was the one who arranged Sophia and Alex's blind date. If you think my methods are underhanded, perhaps we shouldn't associate anymore. It was you? Emma's hands hung in midair as she started crying, desperately trying to salvage the situation. Mrs. Anderson, I didn't mean you were underhanded. I'm sure you did this because Sophia deceived you. Otherwise, with your excellent judgment, how could you possibly choose her? Mrs. Anderson's face darkened further. Interesting. Sophia didn't even know Alex existed. I decided she was my granddaughter-in-law after watching her care for me at the hospital for so long, before I ever arranged for her to meet Alex. Emma was speechless, then turned on me furiously. You must have said something to Mrs. Anderson. Otherwise, how could someone like you, who's inferior to me in every way, steal what's mine? Slap. My stepmother, more clear-headed than her husband and daughter, struck Emma hard across the face. Emma, Sophia is your sister. Even if she took something of yours, you shouldn't speak to her this way. She bowed to Mrs. Anderson. Emma is still immature and gets emotional easily. As her mother, I apologize to you and to Sophia. But Emma did have a point about one thing. She continued with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Someone of your caliber, who built such a successful company, surely understands the importance of keeping promises. Mrs. Anderson replied coolly, if your family hadn't kept postponing discussions about the wedding, making me feel unwelcome, I wouldn't have acted this way. You misunderstood, my stepmother said, suddenly looking at me with fake maternal concern. We were honored by the prospect of Emma marrying Alex. Sophia is the older sister, and she was still with her boyfriend recently. I wanted to arrange Sophia's wedding first, then discuss Emma's, so Sophia wouldn't resent me for favoring her sister. She showed Mrs. Anderson her phone. I wouldn't dare lie to you. These are photos of Sophia with her boyfriend Ryan. I don't know how she ended up married to Alex. Sophia, you had a boyfriend? Mrs. Anderson asked, looking puzzled. I glanced at the photo, an intimate picture of Ryan and me. No wonder my stepmother had managed to stand out among Dad's many girlfriends. Before I could speak, my stepmother continued her performance. Sophia, I thought you would be honest with Alex before marrying him. I'm sorry for misunderstanding. Alex, Sophia is a good girl. Please don't hold this against her. I apologize on her behalf. Mrs. Anderson was quiet for a moment. I see this has all been a misunderstanding. Sophia, I don't mind your past, but I did make a commitment to the Hamilton family first, she said, squeezing my hand apologetically. Don't worry though, even if you don't marry Alex, I'll still consider you my honorary granddaughter. Emma couldn't contain herself. Mrs. Anderson, she's a liar. Why should she be your granddaughter? Thank you for understanding, my stepmother said, pulling the ranting Emma aside with a warning look. Once Sophia and Alex divorce, we can discuss Emma and Alex's wedding date. She didn't forget to play the victim. Being a stepmother is so difficult. I cared too much about Sophia's situation and almost caused a terrible mistake. Thank goodness. Mrs. Anderson interrupted her. Aren't you Mr. Sullivan's daughter? When I took over Anderson Industries, Mr. Sullivan helped me tremendously. That's why I came to arrange an engagement with the Hamilton family 10 years ago. At the time, Mr. Hamilton said he only had one daughter, Emma, so I assumed she was Mr. Sullivan's granddaughter. Alex, who had been silent, finally spoke up. Mr. Sullivan's real granddaughter is Sophia. I thought you knew her identity when you arranged our blind date. Mrs. Anderson paused, then clapped her hands excitedly. After all this back and forth, Sophia is still my granddaughter-in-law. Perfect. Emma tugged at Dad and whispered something to him. Dad, who had been too scared to speak up and draw Alex's attention, now smiled awkwardly at the grandmother and grandson. Sophia grew up in the countryside without a proper education. The gap between her and Alex's sophistication is enormous. These two kids would have constant conflicts if they stayed together. Emma is different. Her mother and I raised her personally, and she attended the same schools as Alex. She's used to high society and would have plenty in common with him. He pulled Emma forward, trying to sell her. Mrs. Anderson laughed coldly. So you do know you treat your two daughters differently. Your favoritism has reached the Pacific Ocean. Let me clarify something. I've always taught my grandson to treat people equally. The Anderson family only cares about character. Superficial things are useless to us. She glanced dismissively at the mother-daughter pair. Dad was deeply embarrassed but didn't dare argue. It's not that bad. Sir, I should also remind you that I don't like used goods, and I certainly don't stoop to fighting over hand-me-downs. Your younger daughter and I are clearly not from the same world, Alex said, taking my hand and declaring firmly. Also, Sophia and I are legally married and will be having our wedding ceremony soon. Watching the three of them unable to utter a word, I had to admire how the grandmother and grandson dealt with shameless people. Emma, burning with jealousy, pulled out her phone in a desperate move. You say you don't like second-hand goods? Here are all the photos of your legal wife with Ryan. She scrolled through intimate photos of Ryan and me, sneering. If you want, I have videos too. You can enjoy them at your leisure. Alex took her phone, his brow furrowing deeply as he scrolled through each photo in complete silence, clearly taking them very seriously. Emma whispered in my ear, "Did you think stealing my things would let you keep them? Sophia, you don't deserve this." Alex, these are all in the past. Why dwell on them? Mrs. Anderson tried to ease the tension. Alex remained absorbed in the photos, ignoring his grandmother's words while the mother-daughter duo watched gleefully from the sidelines. I didn't need to look to remember every photo there. I had treasured my relationship with Ryan, but he had used my devotion as a tool to impress Emma. I no longer cared about Alex's reaction. I just knew my youth was being torn apart piece by piece until it completely disappeared. My stepmother added fuel to the fire. Alex, don't blame Sophia. It's my fault for not keeping her close when she avoided me after I married her father. Otherwise, she'd no self-respect like Emma does now. I almost laughed. Did she want to see the video I had of her self-respecting daughter? Just as I was about to pull out my phone to retaliate, Alex spoke first. Ma'am, why should others accomplish what you couldn't do yourself? I've deleted all the photos. These involve Sophia's privacy, and I don't want anyone else seeing them. You know the consequences if they spread. Emma stood frozen for a long moment, unable to believe it. You don't care about her past? You actually like damaged goods? Slap. I struck her hard across the face the moment she finished speaking. Emma, having a normal relationship is perfectly legal. I projected the video of her and Ryan onto the family's giant TV screen for everyone to enjoy their live-action movie. I hadn't planned to release this video, but since she insisted on crossing my boundaries, I'd let her be thoroughly humiliated. Emma saw herself on the screen and went pale with panic, frantically pressing buttons on the TV until the screen went black. Watching her pointless efforts, I found it amusing. Whether people saw a little or a lot, it didn't change the fact that my stepmother's supposedly pure and innocent daughter was in her sister's boyfriend's bed, discussing how to suppress me. Dad covered his face and moved away from Emma, probably too embarrassed to admit this was his pride and joy of a daughter. Mrs. Anderson snorted coldly at my cowering stepmother. So this is the daughter you and Mr. Hamilton carefully raised? Sophia was right. Normal relationships are fine. But Emma just said this was Sophia's boyfriend, which makes her a knowing third party. Isn't that morally corrupt? She looked my stepmother up and down and nodded. Though, with a mother like that setting the example, it's not surprising. Alex cleared his throat and reminded them. Grandma, he was her ex-boyfriend. Emma stamped her feet in fury, glaring at me with hatred. I stared back defiantly, deliberately raising my chin, which made her avert her gaze, afraid I'd slap her again. Sophia, pack your things. Starting today, you're moving in with me. Alex and I are your family now. I'll discuss the dowry directly with you. Mrs. Anderson squeezed my hand and glanced coldly at Dad. Alex added, if there's nothing important here, we'll just buy everything new. I had moved my belongings out the day Dad tried to force me into marriage. There wasn't really anything left in this house that belonged to me, except for Mom's belongings. Let's go. I knew Dad wouldn't give me Mom's things while we were in a standoff, so I'd have to find another way later. Besides, Alex and I only had a marriage of convenience. I didn't want to trouble them further. Since you're already married, you should have your wedding ceremony soon. Why don't you stay at home for these last few days? Dad hurried forward to stop us, his voice pleading. Emma tugged at him, dissatisfied. Dad? She grew up in the countryside. This was never really her home. Why are you trying to keep her here? Slap. Dad suddenly backhanded her, leaving her covering her face in disbelief as tears streamed down. Daddy, you've never hit me before. Now you're hitting me for this country bumpkin? You're playing favorites, she sobbed. Dad glared at her, then glanced nervously at Alex and his grandmother. It's because I never disciplined you that you became so spoiled. Look in the mirror, you're not even a fraction as good as your sister. My stepmother was clearly unhappy but pulled her daughter back to their room without a word. Dad quickly changed his demeanor, wiping his eyes as he faced us. When I sent Sophia to the countryside, I was worried she couldn't handle suddenly having a stepmother. All these years, she never asked to come home, so I couldn't force her. It's my fault for being too considerate of the child's feelings. From now on, I'll take good care of her. He grabbed my hand, choking up. Sophia, how can you not have family support for something as important as your wedding? I looked at him expressionlessly and said deliberately, You're right. The Anderson family dowry isn't a small amount. It wouldn't be safe for me to handle so much money alone. Exactly. Dad will keep it safe for you. That's the most secure option, Dad said, his eyes lighting up with excitement. I pulled my hand away and said slowly, I won't take a penny of the dowry money. Stop dreaming. Dad's face contorted with rage as he raised his hand to hit me. I moved behind Alex and repeated his earlier words. Didn't you say you respect my wishes, which is why you held back from bringing me home? Please hold back now too. Alex stepped protectively in front of me, staring coldly at Dad. Sophia is my wife now. Offending her means offending the Anderson family. You're my daughter and he's my son-in-law. The Hamilton and Anderson families are one big happy family. What's all this talk about offending? Dad backed down, laughing awkwardly. Since it's your choice, I'll continue to hold back. Alex nodded approvingly and led Mrs. Anderson and me away. As we left the Hamilton house, Mrs. Anderson decided to give us newlyweds some privacy and had her driver take her home separately. Sitting in Alex's car, I hesitated before making a request. What I said about not wanting the dowry money was just to spite my stepmother and sister. Could I borrow that money from you? I'll pay you back quickly. I planned to use the money to bargain with Dad for Mom's belongings. No one knew that I'd agreed to return to the Hamilton house because Mom's old friend had called to tell me that Mom's belongings included a stock transfer agreement and a diary. I wanted to use Alex's dowry money to trade with Dad for these items. Once I had the stock transfer agreement, I could get the money to pay Alex back. Alex didn't answer immediately, instead frowning as he studied me. I quickly pulled out my notebook and wrote an IOU, pressing my thumbprint on it before handing it to him. I really will pay you back. Sophia, we're married now. This money should naturally go to you anyway. Don't be so formal with me, Alex said seriously. I stared at him in surprise, not understanding what he meant. We had a marriage of convenience. Was he taking it seriously? But I didn't quite believe anyone would be so good to me. I said politely, Thank you. As long as he was willing to lend it to me, I could pay him back. Alex seemed to guess what I needed the dowry money for and gave me a new card with exactly enough funds to help Hamilton Corp get through their crisis. I took the card and contacted Dad, insisting he come alone to meet me. At the coffee shop, I handed him the card and he gave me Mom's belongings. Sophia, I know you have issues with those two, but you still have feelings for your dad. I'll come to your wedding. I can't let people think you have no family support. Dad smiled as he fondled the card, pretending to be thoughtful. I won't bring those two. Don't worry. I knew he insisted on attending my wedding, only to continue latching on to the Anderson family cash cow. But I didn't stop him, because I knew that once I had Mom's will, all his schemes for Hamilton Corp would just be him working for me, the real owner. A hard-working employee was a good thing. After parting with Dad, I returned to the Anderson house and peacefully helped Mrs. Anderson prepare for the wedding. Before I knew it, the wedding day had arrived. I stood in the sacred church wearing a white wedding dress, scanning the packed venue until I spotted Dad in the crowd. He had brought that mother-daughter duo after all. Before the ceremony began, my stepmother suddenly pulled Emma over to me. Sister, I was wrong before. I'm apologizing to you. I've broken up with Ryan, Emma said, having dropped her spoiled princess act to appear unusually docile. My stepmother took both our hands and pressed them together. You sisters need to get along well. Before I could respond, my stepmother suddenly screamed and tumbled down the steps, blood flowing from her thigh as she shouted toward Dad, "William, save our baby!" Her words suggested she'd fallen and was having a miscarriage. I couldn't help but laugh coldly. This pregnancy was awfully convenient timing. Sure enough, instead of helping my stepmother and her baby, Emma shoved me hard and accused me loudly. My mother and I came here in good faith to apologize and make peace with you. Even if you didn't appreciate it, how could you deliberately push my mother down the stairs? This is attempted murder. Dad rushed over and slapped me without warning. Do you know how long I've been waiting for this, son? Their words drew everyone's attention, and the guests who barely knew me began talking even more intensely about this Anderson family daughter-in-law. Finding some unknown country girl as a daughter-in-law was bad enough, but she's actually evil enough to try to murder her own stepmother at her wedding. What kind of judgment does Alex have? How does this woman qualify to marry Alex? Did she trap him with a pregnancy? This is attempted murder. Call the police. The wedding guests were basically all drawn to our drama, demanding I be sent to jail. Alex heard the commotion and came over too. You see how evil this woman is now, don't you? If you insist on marrying her today, it will affect all of Anderson Industries, Emma warned Alex, then pulled out her phone to call police. And you forget about marrying into wealth. Prison is where you belong. Alex's security team reported back that this area was a surveillance blind spot with no recording of what had just happened. Emma had calculated all of this perfectly and smiled smugly. I thought I was completely helpless in this moment, but then I felt someone grip my hand tightly and heard a voice beside me. Don't be afraid. We'll figure this out. Yes, we would figure it out. The law wouldn't let truly evil people get away with their crimes. I had someone bring me the bag I'd left in the bridal suite and pulled out some documents, handing them to Dad. Mom saw your medical report years ago and knew you couldn't have more children, but she kept it secret from you. So, how exactly did this woman get pregnant? I remembered seeing the housekeeper cleaning blood from my stepmother's dress during my last visit home. She obviously wasn't carrying someone else's child either. She was faking the pregnancy to sabotage my wedding with Alex. Emma looked stunned and turned to my stepmother for help. Dad took the medical report, apparently remembering his accident and hospitalization years ago. His hands shook as he realized the son he'd been hoping for all these years could never exist. The shock triggered a stroke, and he collapsed with foam at his mouth, convulsing. The ambulance arrived and took both Dad and my stepmother to the hospital. Alex and I followed, temporarily postponing the wedding. At the hospital, Dad was diagnosed with a paralyzing stroke. He looked much older and had lost all his previous arrogance. I watched him through the glass window for a while, my emotions complicated, then left. When Mom was pregnant years ago, he had stripped away her rights in Hamilton Corp. She died in childbirth along with my baby brother, and he sent me to the countryside to fend for myself. Now he was reaping what he'd sown. I didn't go in to see him, instead going to find that mother-daughter duo for a final confrontation. They were trying to sneak out of the hospital when Alex, who'd anticipated this, stopped them and brought them to me. I'm telling you, your father wrote a will years ago leaving you nothing. Now that he's paralyzed, we should take him home, and his money has nothing to do with you, my stepmother said, no longer pretending to be a miscarrying victim. Emma chimed in, didn't you already climb the social ladder? Hamilton Corp has nothing to do with you anymore. Stop bothering us. Having completely offended Alex, they just wanted to cling to Dad as their meal ticket. Their greedy and defensive eyes making me sick. You want to take care of my father? Fine. Once he's discharged, you can take him home, I said coldly. But Hamilton Corp and the mansion you're living in belong to my grandfather. They were left to my mother. After Mom died, she signed an agreement leaving everything to me. It has nothing to do with you. I threw a copy of Mom's stock transfer agreement at the mother-daughter pair. Dad had thought that with Mom dead and me hidden in the countryside, he could steal everything that belonged to her. He never knew Mom had secretly signed the stock transfer papers for me. After reading the stock transfer agreement, the mother-daughter duo refused to believe it and insisted on finding Dad. Just then, a nurse approached with a bill. Are you family of William Hamilton? Please pay his surgery fees immediately. My stepmother quickly offered her cards, but they all showed as frozen. She had to grab her daughter and try to escape. Alex and I called the police and stood on the second floor watching the mother-daughter duo, knowing they couldn't get away. Soon, officers arrived and arrested Emma again for filing false police reports, while my stepmother was taken in for bribing a doctor to provide fake medical certificate. The mother-daughter duo's wailing echoed through the hospital lobby before disappearing from our sight. I've already transferred back the money you gave me. Thank you for helping me all this time. If you ever need anything, I hope I can help you too. I handed him a bank card, knowing I'd caused trouble for the Anderson family by ruining the wedding, and wanted to proactively suggest divorce. After all, he'd only married me to avoid hassles. Alex's eyes darkened as he silently took the card after a long pause. I've been deceiving Mrs. Anderson all this time. I want to go back and apologize to her. Thinking of how Mrs. Anderson had always protected me, she truly wanted a granddaughter-in-law, so I couldn't let such a good person be misled. Alex seemed to want to say something but just nodded simply and walked ahead. Sitting in his car, this time felt like returning to that first day we went to get our marriage license, strange and distant. Soon we arrived back at the Anderson mansion and told Mrs. Anderson everything. She wasn't angry about any of it, instead sighing with relief. Thank goodness you two are fake. Alex and I looked at her in surprise. Was Mrs. Anderson celebrating that Alex and I weren't together? Looking up at Alex, I was surprised to see his expression wasn't good either. Come out, Mrs. Anderson called behind her, and an elegant, beautiful young woman walked down the stairs. What surprised me was that our styles were very similar. So this was why Alex had always been kind to me? I was just a substitute. Even though Alex and I only had a business arrangement, realizing this result made my heart inexplicably ache. The girl's eyes were only for Alex when she approached, and his were only for her. Alex, it's been so long, she said. They embraced, looking perfect together. Not wanting to disturb this beautiful moment, I stepped aside, feeling like I should quickly leave this place where I didn't belong. Perhaps noticing my sudden retreat, the girl turned her attention to me and smiled as she extended her hand. I'm Lily Snow. Thank you for keeping Alex company during this time and helping me ward off his admirers. Now it's my turn to be with him. She linked arms intimately with Alex, resting her head on his shoulder. Alex helped me a lot too, I said, shaking her hand with a smile. Alex said nothing beside them, accepting all of this as fact. I took a deep breath, knowing it was time to leave, and smiled friendly at everyone. Thank you all for helping me during this time. If you ever need anything from me, please let me know. Dear, I have something I'd like you to help me with right now, Mrs. Anderson said. When I looked at her, she continued directly. I really enjoyed the time you spent caring for me at the hospital. Could you let me adopt you as my granddaughter? I'd like you to visit this old lady more often. I involuntarily clenched my hands, instinctively wanting to refuse, but held back and said nothing. Being Mrs. Anderson's granddaughter would mean calling Alex brother in the future. I unconsciously wanted to see Alex's reaction. He was frowning deeply, seeming quite unhappy. He really didn't want me to become his grandmother's adopted granddaughter? So, a terrible thought popped into my head, making me shudder. Without hesitation, I agreed. I never had a grandmother growing up and always envied others who had loving grandmothers. If you don't mind, I'd love to spend more time with you. Wonderful, wonderful. Mrs. Anderson beckoned me over, then looked toward the other side. Alex, what were you trying to tell me earlier? Alex shook his head slightly. The company has some matters to attend to. I'll leave first. With that, he left without looking back. The next day, Mrs. Anderson sent me a location, saying she'd found me an excellent marriage prospect. I didn't need to date anyone, but not wanting Mrs. Anderson's efforts to go to waste, I went anyway. The man was decent looking with no bad habits, but I was honest with him that I was only here to appease family. Actually, I have someone I like, and she likes me too, but she has some concerns. Could you accompany me to the courthouse as a prop? The man scratched his head sheepishly. I want to try proposing to her there one more time. Seeing his determination, I felt admiration. When you care about someone, you should speak up immediately instead of being afraid and missing your chance. I agreed to help him and went with him to the courthouse. By sheer coincidence, we ran into Alex at the entrance, with Lily Snow beside him. Sophia, you seem different lately, Lily said, looking me up and down before glancing meaningfully at Alex, her voice deliberately loud. Yes, I was different. For some reason, after returning home, I'd started hating my old style of dress. It felt like a constant reminder that I was just Alex's substitute. Even though we'd originally been using each other, I'd still gotten emotionally involved and made myself miserable. I felt like I was sick. Alex wasn't looking at me, but staring intently at the man beside me, his expression dark. Maybe my presence reminded him of unpleasant memories from when we'd come to this courthouse together. Betraying Lily Snow? We have things to do, so we'll go ahead. You two take care, I said politely, smiling at both of them before turning to leave. Before I could take a step, someone grabbed my arm. It wasn't until we were outside the courthouse that the grip loosened. How long have you known that man before coming here to get married? Alex asked, his eyes full of anger. His accusatory tone triggered all the hurt I'd been accumulating lately. I exploded. What does it matter to you? Don't you already have your white moonlight back? Why are you bothering with this substitute? Really? Jealous? Alex's sharp expression suddenly became gentle, like a sheepdog seeing its owner. He moved closer, staring at my face in confusion. Are you actually jealous? His stare made me feel guilty. I looked away. What? What? Jealousy? Sophia, I helped you and my grandmother before. Do you feel grateful to us? Alex asked. Though I didn't know why he was suddenly asking this, I nodded without hesitation. I definitely felt grateful. Without him and Mrs. Anderson protecting me, dealing with Dad and that mother-daughter duo wouldn't have been so easy. Alex nodded with satisfaction, then frowned as he asked, Would you try to be accommodating toward people you're grateful to? Yes, I replied. He suddenly snorted coldly, looking at me with disbelief and even disdain. Sophia, you're so hypocritical. You talk about being accommodating, but you've been holding a grudge about me treating you as a substitute. I'm not holding a grudge. I caught myself mid-sentence, my heart racing. I quickly shut my mouth. With Alex having Lily Snow, saying such things now wouldn't be good for anyone. Alex pulled me into his arms and whispered in my ear, I like you too, so I won't allow you to appear at the courthouse with other men. We obviously like each other, but won't admit it. Grandma was right, you two need some pushing. Lily Snow emerged from inside, her voice clear and bright. Hearing her words, I began to understand. Alex liked me but hadn't dared confess, so he'd asked Lily Snow to help make me jealous into confessing first. If I hadn't been provoked into telling the truth, would he never have said he liked me? He managed the entire Anderson Industries empire and was decisive in business. He never hesitated once he'd made a decision, so his feelings for me were uncertain, which made him less decisive. Thinking of Mom's fate, I felt even less confident about this uncertainty. I unconsciously stepped back. You can't blame Alex for being scared. You really gave him severe PTSD, Lily Snow said, seeming to read my thoughts as she whispered in my ear. I looked at her questioningly, and she glanced toward Alex. Alex smiled helplessly and handed me an old notebook. June honest? Sunny? Gave her a Children's Day gift today. She immediately gave it to another little boy. Another day of her not liking me. The following entries recorded a long period of the little girl rejecting the notebook's owner, bringing back my own memories. Years ago, Grandpa had taken me to visit his friend. The two men decided to go deep-sea fishing on a whim, leaving me at someone else's villa for an entire month. During that month, a little boy kept following me around. I was too young to understand and thought Grandpa had abandoned me because of his grandfather, so I was very cold toward him. That little boy had been Alex? Remembering Lily Snow's mention of PTSD, I smiled awkwardly. So you recognized me from the first sight? I asked. Alex pulled me into his arms, pretending to be aggrieved. Apparently, I didn't leave a deep enough impression back then. I smiled mischievously and waved his diary. No worries, the impression is deep enough now. I cleared my throat and pretended to read his diary seriously. Before I could get out a single word, the person beside me leaned over and completely silenced me with a kiss. The end. Author's note. This contemporary romance explores themes of family betrayal, second chances, and finding love in unexpected places. While it contains some dramatic elements typical of the genre, it ultimately celebrates the power of standing up for yourself and finding people who truly value you.